Canada's island circuit in the St. Lawrence Seaway is one the driver's life, especially Ayrton Senna. First in 1988 and a commanding lead last year until his engine gave up. But although he's critical of this year's McLaren, he's in pole position again for the 30th time in 37 races. Gerhard Berger's yet to win for McLaren, but he's on the front row of the grid again. Happier that the car fits him better now, but looking ragged in practice in comparison with Senna's smoothness. But can world champion Alain Prost repeat his win in Brazil for Ferrari? To win, you have to finish, and he's only done that twice this year. But third on the grid, he's in the best place to attack the McLarens. The Montreal circuit is notorious for fickle weather. It was dry on Friday, but yesterday's driving rain meant it was Friday's times that decided the grid positions. And that certainly didn't suit Nigel Mansell, whose dry time possibilities were ruined by a puncture. With only 3 points so far, he desperately needs success in Canada. Happily, today's Canadian Grand Prix looks as though it could stay dry, but wet or dry, fuel consumption could be a problem, as Jonathan Palmer explains.
Formula One drivers and family motorists alike take for granted the vast amount of research and development that goes into improving the fuels they use. Grand Prix cars also run on petrol, a bit better than the old 5-star, and teams have the option of several different blends, some better for performance, others for economy, and unleaded can also be used. It's where to put this fuel that provides a major headache for the chassis designers. A tiny Formula One car must accommodate the full race requirement of 45 gallons, now that refueling stops are no longer permitted, whereas a family car needs only to carry a quarter of this. Safety is of paramount importance. The tank itself is made of 5 layers of rubber and Kevlar and is situated right in the centre of the car, between the driver and the engine bay, with the old side extensions that used to wrap around the driver now banned following Berger's fiery accident at Imola last year. Like the family motorist, the Formula One driver also has a fuel gauge, but one so accurate he can tell his consumption a mere 4.5 miles per gallon to the last cc, and if it's too high, he can adjust the mixture setting of his engine. Normally, though, it's the boffins in the pits, surrounded by computers, who monitor fuel consumption and signal any changes required to the driver. High fuel consumption only hurts the pocket of the family motorist. To the Formula One driver, it can mean running out of fuel and perhaps losing the World Championship.
After 4 races, Senna heads Berger by 6 points in the championship, with Jean Alesi a superb third ahead of Prost, followed by Patrese and last year's winner Thierry Boutsen. 2 McLarens on the grid front row again, Prost's Ferrari third, then Nannini and Piquet, Benetton's best yet. Boutsen 6th and Mansell 7th. Alesi in front of Patrese. And row 6, Derek Warwick and Martin Donnelly. Watch for the lights. Any second now, the Canadian, and Berger creeps ahead. Berger almost jumped the start there, and he's up into the corner first, and Senna gets through. Senna leading, Berger is in second place, Nannini is in third place ahead of Prost, and Alesi is challenging the Ferrari ahead of Nelson Piquet. Both the Williams have dropped back. There's a traffic jam, but with fighting for traction, lap 1, Ayrton Senna leads in this 70-lap race, followed by his teammate, McLaren-Honda, and there you can see Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi. He has spun off. Will he be able to get the car started before they come round again? So it's still Senna, Berger, Nannini, Alesi up into 4th position, Piquet up into 5th, Prost down to 6th, Boutsen 7th, Mansell in 8th position, and he started 7th. And so, as I said, Ayrton Senna has got the advantage, but the interesting thing is how well Nannini is up in the Benetton 4.
Yes, indeed, and another charging start by young Jean Alesi, who was very sensible there. That was a good charge. There was a little bit of caution there as he went through the first couple of corners and got him up to 4th place. Very cautious opening few corners by Alain Prost. He's dropped back to 6th place, but that's not too far now. But the interesting thing in this race is going to be when they change tyres. Now you see on the higher part of the circuit, it's almost dry. Then as they come down the hill, the lower part of the circuit, the water is still lying a lot. So the timing of the, assuming that we get no more rain in the near future, which is by no means a certainty, that the circuit is going to dry out fairly quickly. Remember, these big tyres move a lot of water. As Senna leads from Berger, the two McLarens, with the Benetton and the yellow flag, and Martini has they've still not moved his car. That was there from just after the start, the first corner.
And look how Jean Alesi is going in 4th position. Now, these conditions must have been virtually perfect for him and the Tyrrell. The Ford DFR V8 has got less power than the Ford V8 of the Benetton of Nannini in 3rd position, and of course than the Honda engines of the McLaren of Senna, who is leading, and Berger, who is in 2nd position. But it doesn't matter so much in wet conditions like this. Senna is very much a rain master. He won his first Grand Prix in Portugal in appalling conditions. But it looks to me as though Nannini 3rd and Alesi 4th are closing up a bit on Berger 2nd. There is Piquet in 5th position. Prost is 6th. Boutsen is 7th. Nigel Mansell is 8th. Patrese is 9th. And then either Derek Warwick or Martin Donnelly, I didn't get a close enough look at the car, is up into 10th place.
Shot of Prost just locking his brakes there over the bumps. Remember, the surface is extremely bumpy here in Canada. The hard freeze up that they get all winter plays havoc with road surfaces, and the organisers have promised to do something about it for next year. So Senna leading but not really putting away. Gerhard Berger holding him well, as is Nannini. They can't really run much closer than this in these conditions with all the spray that's going on, unless they're moving in to make a challenge. So fairly stalemate with the front 4. Yellow flag still showing. Well, they've moved Martini's car, but really that's not a safe place to leave a racing car, and the marshals are going to have to do something about that. Otherwise, I would think that the clerk of the course will have to stop the race, or be very inclined to stop it unless they can get that car further out of the way.
4 seconds covering the first 4 at this stage of the race. Berger is certainly not dropping back, and nor for that matter is Nannini or Alesi. Just 4 seconds over the first 4. The Benettons, who have had a lot of work done on the chassis and aerodynamics, going well, and Thierry Boutsen starting to reel in Alain Prost, and for that matter Derek Warwick is reeling in Riccardo Patrese. So Warwick in the V12 Lamborghini powered Lotus, which has got a good power spread, good for this sort of circuit, and nice smooth torque. The power doesn't come in with a terrific rush, and that's what you want in conditions like this. And last year, of course, Derek Warwick led the Canadian Grand Prix for about 15 minutes of glory. That was in the Arrows. So there is Senna. Now let's see what the gap is. He looks in his mirror to see where his teammate Berger is. You can see there. Now look, there was the Austrian in the background, who was 2nd in the Brazilian Grand Prix and is 2nd in the World Championship. Senna, of course, very much has to be the favourite for this race. He won in 1988. He was leading after an absolutely brilliant drive last year, having changed from wets to slicks to wets again, tyres I'm talking about, when his Honda engine let go. Now we're riding with the only Brabham in the race, that of Stefano Modena, because unfortunately the young Australian David Brabham did not qualify. Now look, you see that's Nannini, who is definitely pulling away from Alesi, but equally definitely closing up on Gerhard Berger, as Piquet still in 5th position goes through. Now there's the brilliant young Frenchman. He's already got 2 second places this year. He's on Pirelli tyres, unlike the majority of the competitors who use Goodyears.
Now you can see the line starting to dry on the wetter part of the track, and the thinking driver will be bearing in mind that tactics are much more likely to win this race than pure fast driving. Piquet already looking a little bit lonely as he chases Alesi, and the leading 3 now beginning to go away, and Thierry Boutsen, who's been climbing all over the back of Alain Prost, ever since the end of the first lap of the race, has got past him, so he moves into 6th place.
You look down on the hairpin now and you see all the first three together in the same shot. But Senna, with no spray on his visor, nobody to fight with in front of him, and he can pace himself, and you can see, as James has said, how there is a significantly dry line developing now. The tyres may soon be overheating, in which case it'll be changed to slicks.
Yeah, definitely a chance for to get into the pits right now. Sooner, and Alesi doing the intelligent thing there, moving off onto the wet bit to try and cool down his extra soft compound wet weather tyres, because they overheat on a dry road. And what a gaggle behind. Tremendous train of cars. This is the midfield battle.
Well, Alessandro Nannini has my admiration. He's holding on extremely well. The nimble Benetton, which is designed by Rory Byrne, but I'm quite sure has had considerable input, there it is, from John Barnard, is not suffering from a down-on-power Ford V8 engine in comparison with the V10 Hondas of the McLarens in front of him because of the circuit conditions. And the handling of the car has been vastly improved. Alessandro Nannini never really felt he won the Japanese Grand Prix. He won it by default, with both Prost and Senna going out. This is last year, of course. And all right, he won fair and square. The man who gets the checkered flag first is the winner. But he said, I was not happy to win like that. He wants to win this one. But first of all, of course, he's got to get past Berger and Senna. And in the background, it's still John Alesi. We are on lap 10, which is 1/7 distance in this 70-lap race. And as you watch Ayrton Senna, it's still second. There he is, Gerhard Berger. It's still third, Alessandro Nannini in the leading V8 powered car, the Benetton. Still fourth, number 4, John Alesi, the Frenchman in the Tyrrell Ford. In 5th position, it's still the second Benetton of Nelson Piquet. 6th is Thierry Boutsen. 7th is Alain Prost. 8th is Nigel Mansell. So the Ferraris are a real disappointment. And you can see Riccardo Patrese there with the Lotus Lamborghini of Derek Warwick behind him. And behind Derek Warwick is his teammate Martin Donnelly, driving in a Canadian Grand Prix for the first time. Here's Riccardo.
Yes, good to see Derek Warwick going well, and quite frankly, the Lamborghini engine, I would think, must be the envy of most of the drivers in these conditions.
And we've just been given news that Gerhard Berger, has a 60-second penalty. Now, for jumping the start. Do you remember when they got away, I said it looked to me as though Gerhard Berger was jumping the start. He has, and into the pits for tyres comes Patrese.
Yes, well, finally the flurry of tyre changes has started, albeit rather late, I would have said. I think anybody who'd changed a couple of laps ago would have been the ones who were really right. Berger's start, he clearly did jump it. He lifted off, but he gave it a proper move, and he'd moved a good 2 car lengths forward from his grid. Although he'd come off the power at the time when the light went green, he quite clearly jumped the start. Berger's been, to be fair to him, I think it's a result that he must have gambled for, because Berger's made a lot of flyer starts over the last couple of seasons. Very impressive and exciting it's been to watch, but he does tend to second-guess the green light. And here we have a replay, and I saw a bit of car flying up in the air there somewhere. Somebody clipped something. Yes, the front wing is on the ground, and that's Bernard,
who of course has been into the pits. So now we have a new second-place man this time, and it is Alessandro Nannini is up into second place. Berger is effectively out of the race unless something unbelievably dramatic happened. And there is Alesi in 3rd position. Piquet now in 4th place, and you can see how close he is. And that means to say, as Piquet challenges and goes through and takes Alesi, the Benetton Fords are in 2nd and 3rd places. This race is turning out to be very interesting.
Yes, and looking at that is bad news for the Pirelli runners, because that looked to me very much as if Alesi's wet tyres have absolutely had it. Very soft compound, I've no doubt, and I think that the dry track has chewed him up, but that really should encourage him to get in and get on to dries, because this is clearly the wrong tactics to be hanging around there on wets on a dry track. It really seems that the vast majority of drivers in this race are making an elementary mistake, including Ayrton Senna, who we look at now, who still hasn't changed when he should have done it, certainly 2 laps ago or more.
Senna moves inside the very unhappy-looking Olivier Griard, who, after 11 laps, has been lapped. And look at that, that's one of the footwork arrows, and one of the Delaras. Sorry, I can't tell you which until I see the driver of them.
And Senna's into the pits. Well, he may well get away with this because he'll outdrive the others, as we know, and of course the others haven't had the brains to come in, so I level criticism at Senna, but the only thing in his defence is he may have said, well, if the others aren't coming in, I might as well stay out. So good, tremendous stop too by the McLaren team. A lot of wheel spin, not much grip for Senna getting away, but a bit of a messy departure, but he got away with it. Now, we will have a look at Senna's lap time, and I would think that his first flying lap will be his fastest lap of the race so far by some way, and that will underline the fact that he should have been on sticks earlier.
And of course, you're looking at a new leader, Alessandro Nannini, the man who won the Japanese Grand Prix, still on the original tyres which he started this race, is leading here in Canada. Derek Warwick comes in. So now we've had Patrese in for tyres, we've had Berger in, and Senna, and Piquet, and Warwick. They're all coming in and leaving at great velocity, and it's going to completely transform the race. Now, Senna's time of just under 8 seconds was a magnificent stop and a real credit to the McLaren team.
Yes, we didn't get a time on the Lotus stop, but it looked a bit of a mess. We see an action replay now, and that was just the shot we saw before as Piquet accelerated away, getting a lot more traction than Jean Alesi, who really should be in to put on slick tyres now. So we wait with bated breath for Senna's first flying lap to complete his first flying lap, to see what time that is.
And you're watching Alessandro Nannini across the line now. Hopefully we'll see Ayrton Senna soon. Meantime, here is Alesi, who has, and into the pits he comes, and Boutsen. In fact, they're all coming in, and Boutsen and Prost. So there's the Tyrrell, there's the Williams, there's the Ferrari, and we're staying with Thierry Boutsen as he does his pit stop. Now there is Alain Prost, and Jean Alesi, don't forget, is in. And this looks to me, it's even better than the McLaren stop of Ayrton Senna, 7.5 seconds. That is dynamite.
Yes, and the slow thing about that stop was actually Prost's departure, because the Ferrari mechanics had the wheels changed as quick as I've ever seen 4 wheels changed. Something under 5 seconds they were ready, and then it took a couple of seconds to get the car off the jacks and for Prost to get away. But spectacular pit stop by Ferrari there.
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing now, is how long is it going to be before Alessandro Nannini, number 19 in the green Benetton there, the Italian, how long is it going to be before he comes in to change tyres? Alesi is in second place now, or was, because now Senna is back there. Nigel Mansell moves up into third position, yet to come in. Alesi in fourth place, Prost in fifth position, and it's going to take some time for the race to settle down, as up to his teammate Gerhard Berger, who I remind you has got a 60-second penalty, but who has been in for tyres, comes Ayrton Senna. Now, is Berger going to move over and let Senna through? Is he? He is most certainly not. Absolutely together now. Berger well down in the race, of course, because of the combination of the 60-second penalty for jumping the start and his pit stop. And he passed Ayrton Senna. We didn't see that. That was a replay.
Well, of course, Senna is on cold tyres, having just come out of the pits. He's now had a lap in which to warm them up. He's following Berger. It'll be interesting to see. He's got to tiptoe a little bit here, because although there's a dry line, if he gets off it at all on those slick tyres, it'll all get a bit exciting. Good shot of Berger. Yeah, working away in the cockpit. Tremendous concentration, fairly light control on the steering at this stage. And there's a set of wets just come off. Very hot, steam pouring off them, well over the boiling point of water.
About 15, is Nannini coming in now, or is he not? The gap is 17 seconds, or was, between the man you're watching, Alessandro Nannini, on his original tyres, and Ayrton Senna, who has changed and is up to racing speed.
Yes, and his first flying lap was 7 seconds quicker than his previous lap on, as Nannini goes into the pits, albeit a little bit late. And Senna some 7 seconds faster than his fastest lap on wets just then, his first flying lap on dry tyres, and that really, I think, says that he was quite a bit, 2 or 3 laps, or certainly 2 laps too late.
And this is an awful stop. It's really hampering Nannini, 13 seconds. So on the pit stop alone, Ayrton Senna has gained 5 seconds.
And Senna is right behind Modena now, looking for a way past him. He goes through too, and on the wet bit now, you see what happens in slicks. And that's the problem that Senna's got, of course. When you're on slicks, you daren't leave the dry line, or you have to shut your eyes and really pray when you get off the dry line in order to pass somebody.
Ayrton Senna leading by nearly 15 seconds now. From in second position, it's Alain Prost has gone up to second position after the stops. Saw Berger ripping off one of his tear-offs there. It must be getting very dirty in these conditions, but on lap 17 out of 70, it is Ayrton Senna in the lead. It is Prost in second position. Watch this replay and see how Senna, you see, that's how good a racing driver's reflexes have to be. He just put his right-hand wheels on that wet patch, instantly lost traction, the car got out of shape, and Senna fought it back into line immediately. As I was saying, Senna is leading. Alain Prost, his deadly rival, his teammate from the past 2 years in McLaren, but this year in a Ferrari, is in second position. In third place, it's Thierry Boutsen, and there was the Ferrari, and there is Boutsen. That is the gap. With the yellow flashes, that is Alain Prost. Now, as they fight their way through the traffic, Prost has passed Capelli, and Boutsen has just passed Wojtek, and Prost now has got to get ahead of Suzuki in the Lola, and he does so. And Thierry Boutsen, last year's winner, now in third place, and the gap between Senna and Prost is up to 27 seconds now. So the Brazilian is using all his considerable racecraft and his new tyres. With Alain Prost in the semi-automatic gearbox Ferrari, is it going to last the race? In second position, ahead of Thierry Boutsen. In fourth position, it is Nelson Piquet. In fifth position, it is Nigel Mansell. Both the Ferraris in the top 5. Sixth in the points, Derek Warwick in the Lotus. And behind him is Riccardo Patrese. Ahead of, in eighth position, Gerhard Berger.
And you see now the tremendous advantage that the quicker men have on slick tyres against those drivers who are stuck on wets. Prost and Boutsen set for a bit of a tussle. Boutsen, remember, no doubt likes the circuit a great deal after his victory here last year. And it seems a character of Montreal in June to have this changeable weather. It seems to be a fairly regular feature of the Canadian Grand Prix these days. We had showers last year, threw the race into some confusion, from which the person who remained coolest, calmest, and held it all together to the end was Thierry Boutsen. And Boutsen really climbing all over the back of Prost. Good attacking driving from Boutsen, but we are, of course, Boutsen has this problem with, if he's going to pass, he's got to dip out onto the slippery bit of the circuit, he's got to move off the dry line, and that really negates any efforts at the moment unless he can force Prost into some sort of a mistake.
And not so very far behind them is the evergreen Nelson Piquet in the Benetton Ford. Ayrton Senna, of course, he doesn't realise what the battle is going on behind him, but it is between Prost and Boutsen, and he won't care, because Prost and Boutsen are making it difficult for each other. Each wants the fastest line. Prost has got to try and stop Boutsen getting past. And there in the background, you saw the Benetton. It's very close indeed between Prost second, there he is, Boutsen third, there he is, as they come down to the very difficult pits corner, and Nelson Piquet, who is in fourth place, ahead of the second Ferrari of Nigel Mansell. Look back, there you just saw Nelson Piquet. And Piquet is actually catching the Ferrari and the Williams-Renault. By the way, hats off again to Renault, who came back into racing last year. They won with Thierry Boutsen here and in Australia, and a lot of second places with Riccardo Patrese, and now Prost is being held up by the Ligier. There is the gap, nearly 30 seconds, and Boutsen loses it, and straight into the Ligier. So Boutsen out of the race, up into third position goes Nelson Piquet, and Boutsen is going to try and struggle back to the pits, but he's out of the race, I think.
And Boutsen dips out to try and go past, and onto the wet, loses control of the car, completely under-braking the car, snaps back across in front of Prost, and takes Larini out, and Prost did very well to anchor up to avoid all the debris there.
Nelson Piquet, and you can see Nigel Mansell coming up into the picture. There he is. Ferrari second, Benetton third, Ferrari fourth of Nigel Mansell. In fifth position, it is still Derek Warwick, as he was last year, doing well in the Canadian Grand Prix. Sixth, Berger. Seventh, Patrese. In eighth position, it is Martin Donnelly. So both the Lotuses are doing well. Mansell. Nigel desperately needs points in this race. He's only finished once this year to get just 3 points, fourth in Brazil. And it certainly hasn't been for lack of trying. It certainly hasn't been because he's lost any of his ability, as you can see for yourselves, because Nelson Piquet in third position is making no ground up at all on Alain Prost, whereas Mansell is certainly making gain on Nelson Piquet. So, over the line, Nigel Mansell. And of course, they have all been in for tyres. There's Derek Warwick. And behind Derek Warwick, Riccardo Patrese. So again, positions, because we are on the 24th lap now in this 70-lap race. And now it's just a question of time, I think, before Mansell, and the track is drying out all the time. You can see that light-coloured strip is getting wider, but there's no margin for them to move off it, because even there, you see on the inside, it's slippery and shiny, and that is Nannini. Alessandro Nannini in the background, walking, so he's perfectly all right. Now, this will be a replay. Let's see what happened as Patrese in the Williams car. That is exactly where Senna had his problem, but unlike Senna, Nannini did not succeed in holding it, and there's no friction between the tyres and the grass and the track on this wet part. Straight into the tyres and the Armco, and out of the race goes Alessandro Nannini in his Benetton Ford, the man who led the race before he changed his tyres.
And that again was the problem of having to get off the dry line onto the wet to try and pass slower cars. And that certainly caught Nannini out, and that, of course, is probably one of the wettest bits of the circuit too. And like I said, we saw Senna have a little twitch there, and he wasn't really pressing at all hard. Nannini trying to make up time, because he lost a lot on the road anyway by making such a late pit stop. And now you see Senna cutting down Berger's lead. Now, going back to what I was saying about when to make your pit stop, the reason that we don't have Berger, we're not calling him in first place because, of course, of his minute penalty, but Berger is actually in fifth place with his penalty, as Alesi still charging away there. But the interesting point is that Berger, because of stopping earlier than Senna, we didn't see that either, but he was in before Senna, he had a big lead over Senna, and that was because he made the pit stop at the right time. Now, it does amaze me that these drivers, with all the historical information, the experience of seeing other people in lower formulae about when to stop, they all stop too late. It's quite extraordinary.
Well, you really are seeing some superlative driving now as Gerhard Berger dives through the traffic, followed by Ayrton Senna, who has got behind him Jean Alesi, followed by Martin Donnelly. And you saw Alesi passing Donnelly at the hairpin, and Berger is still staying ahead of Ayrton Senna on the track, and he's actually up into 5th position in the race, and that takes account of his 60-second penalty. So the Austrian is really charging, and on lap 25, you watch the race leader Ayrton Senna, who is well over half a minute now ahead of Alain Prost in 2nd position, with Nelson Piquet 3rd. That's Gilles spinning, and in 4th position it's Nigel Mansell, and you know how close he is to Nelson Piquet in the Benetton. As Berger goes through, there is Senna, followed by Alesi. Berger goes past Gilles into the hairpin. This is real short circuit stuff, diving in and out of the traffic. And don't forget that they can lose adhesion very, very easily if they just go even a few inches off the line. But oh dear, Gerhard Berger's had some problems this year. He went into the tyre wall at Phoenix and then out of the race in his first race for McLaren, having started in pole position. He finished 2nd in Brazil, he finished 2nd in San Marino. In Monaco he was in 3rd position, and that jump start when he eased away just a fraction before the lights turned from red to green has cost him dear. Meantime, Prost and Piquet, there they are in the scarlet Ferrari and the multicoloured Benetton Ford, are still at it, hammer and tongs on lap 28. And my goodness, that is Jean Alesi in exactly the same place as Nannini. He's hit Nannini's car. Thank heavens Nannini's well away from it. And exactly the same, that was where Senna nearly went off. So once again, we have had a demonstration of how brilliant Senna is. He held it, and neither Nannini nor Alesi succeeded.
Yes, Alesi, anyway, luckily didn't appear to hit it too hard and hit the car, and here we see him, he dipped out onto the wet, and there it is, the brakes lock, all the skew whip, and no deceleration at all, sideways on the wet grass, and then he climbed straight up the Benetton. Now that can be very nasty in accidents, but the speed was fairly low, and he was quite unhurt by the look of it. You'll just see, oh well, he hopped straight out of the car.
I'll tell you that out of the race already have gone Pierluigi Martini, very, very early in the race, of course. We saw them on the 2nd lap trying to get past his Minardi. Thierry Boutsen went out after that contact, and Larini has gone out after contact. Nannini just went off, and it's almost exactly the same place where Senna didn't go off, and he has now been joined by Alesi. Now, Gerhard Berger, who is 11 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna on the road. Of course, he's nearly a full lap behind him, in fact. But Ayrton Senna, well on his own. Exactly 30 seconds. He's maintaining the gap between himself and Alain Prost. Terrific scrap between Prost, Piquet and Mansell, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Here is the battle, but for 6th and 7th, between Riccardo Patrese and Derek Warwick. And Lotus, I'm happy to say, really seem to be getting on top of the new car designed by Frank Derny with its Lamborghini V12 engine. They had a dreadful start to 1990. In fact, Derek Warwick has only finished in one race, and his teammate Martin Donnelly, in the same way, has only finished in one race. But the good news is, as you look at the caption there, Senna, Prost, Piquet, Mansell, Berger, Patrese, that both the Lotus cars are not only running, but well up, because there is Warwick challenging Patrese and going through and taking 6th position. So Warwick is in the points, and not so far behind Riccardo Patrese's Williams Renault is the 2nd Lotus of Martin Donnelly in 8th position. So it's Warwick 6th, Patrese 7th now, and then Donnelly in 8th position, and Mansell starting another charge as they come up now to try and lap Nakajima, who's in the way.
Yes, and Piquet will be looking for Nakajima to cause a bit of a schmozzle, but he doesn't. He very politely and correctly pulls right out of the way of the quicker men, gives them all the space they need, and that was good tail-end driving.
Martin Donnelly in 8th position, about to be lapped by Prost, Piquet and Mansell, who is the fastest man on the circuit. Nigel Mansell, lap 41, and we are now on lap 42, went round in 1 minute 23.8, which is the fastest lap of the race, and is actually a new lap record. That shows you how things have improved, because Ayrton Senna's lap record from 1989 was 1 minute 24.9, so the flying Nigel Mansell has really got the bit between his teeth. There it is, second, third and fourth. They're all being held up by Donnelly, who doesn't see any good reason why he should move over onto the wet, and I don't blame him one little bit. We've seen what happens when you do, with Alesi going off and with Nannini going off and Senna nearly going off, and it's still pretty damp there. Not wet, damp, and in some ways that can be worse, and that's where they went off. So Martin Donnelly, 8th position, with Riccardo Patrese 7th ahead of him, and he is 20 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese. And there's that wonderful view of the circuit with the Olympic rowing strip, the St. Lawrence Seaway on one side, the Olympic rowing strip on the other, as Prost second with the yellow flashes on the Ferrari. Veteran Nelson Piquet, 3 times world champion, 14 times a Grand Prix winner, Nigel Mansell follows them, second, third and fourth, pulling away from Martin Donnelly. And this is real Grand Prix racing. And into the pits comes Riccardo Patrese. Now, why is this tyres? It doesn't know. No one's doing anything about the tyres in the front. Yes, they're doing something about them now. But anyway, Riccardo Patrese, whose teammate Thierry Boutsen, who won last year, is already out, seems to be giving up in the Canadian Grand Prix.
And a new lap record for Ayrton Senna, 1:23.5, so well over a second faster than the old lap record from last year.
And it's Wojtek in front of the man. Pan dab. Piquet goes through. Piquet then, brilliant, ahead of Alain Prost. Hopefully we'll see a replay of that. Nelson Piquet moves up into a magnificent second place in the Canadian Grand Prix. Down to third goes Prost. Still fourth is Nigel Mansell, but now Piquet's got the traffic in front of him.
And this is Piquet passing Prost, and that was a very straightforward manoeuvre. He'd been lining up that for some time. Prost left the door open.
But Piquet, Prost, Mansell, second, third, fourth. Now watch Piquet tackle Wojtek, the Swiss, who very good manners a little while ago moved over. Is he going to do the same thing now? In front of Wojtek is Capelli. In front of Capelli is Grilles.
Yes, well, I'd certainly expect Piquet to go away from Alain Prost by the way he was climbing all over him, but rather unfortunate when he finally does get through to meet such a wall of traffic ahead of him when he's dealt with Wojtek, and he'll be pleased that he managed to get through and Prost didn't, and Prost far too old and wise to have headed for that wet patch to try and slip it inside Wojtek there. Mansell now, I bet you Mansell's going to have a go at Prost as they go into the hairpin. He is indeed, and Mansell is through into third place. So Prost loses 2 places in 2 laps. From second down to fourth. And Mansell now takes up the chase of Piquet. Well, he's quite used to the sight of the back of Piquet's car, but defending Ferrari's interests there.
And the race order now is on lap 51. Ayrton Senna still at 30 seconds ahead of the second place man, who now, of course, is Nelson Piquet in the Benetton. And third position Mansell, and fourth Alain Prost. There he is, ahead of Gerhard Berger, who is catching the 2 Ferraris. It's not inconceivable that Gerhard Berger could still do the usual thing for McLaren and get them home in first and second places. If so, it would have been a truly great drive. Now there is Gerhard Berger, and very soon it could be, he's only 6 seconds behind Nigel Mansell now, and Mansell, of course, is in third position behind Nelson Piquet. Hope you're not getting confused with all this, but the good news is that the track is getting drier and drier all the time. Lap record Ayrton Senna, 1 minute 23.56. which is 1.5 seconds faster than his own previous lap record in the McLaren. And Gerhard Berger, having committed a cardinal error at the start, is doing his very best to make up for it now. And that's Derek Warwick behind Alain Prost. And Derek Warwick, I remind you, is in 6th position. So Prost has got some sort of a problem, no doubt at all about it. But the question now, as we watch Alain Prost ahead of the Lotus Lamborghini of, in 6th position, Derek Warwick, who is followed by his teammate Martin Donnelly in 7th place, Modena in 8th position, Caffey in 9th place. The question, and we'll rejoin it soon, I'm sure, is Nigel Mansell going to be able to get right with Nelson Piquet? And if he does, can he get past him up into 2nd place? And there is a new fastest lap for Nigel Mansell, 1:22.8. Nigel, and that is 7/10 quicker than Ayrton Senna, so Mansell is really on his way.
Yes, it's 2 seconds quicker than last year's lap record, which is really something. Mansell absolutely flying.
And Martin Donnelly seems to be in trouble. He's going very, very slowly indeed. 8th position. Is he going to fail to finish as he did in Brazil and Monaco? And he didn't even start in Phoenix. Martin Donnelly touring there, or looking as though he was touring. I'll be able to let you know later. He's in 8th position, or was. And that's giving, of course, the opportunity. And he certainly, there's a fire at the back. And that's giving Stefano Modena the opportunity to move up a place into 8th position, with Martin Donnelly certainly out of the Canadian Grand Prix. And Mansell held up by Caffey and Nakajima. And of course, Piquet's passed both of them. And Prost is now starting to close on Mansell because he was being held up by Nakajima, who he has gone past. Now you see again what James was talking about. That granulated look on the circuit is the marble. That is rubber, little rubber balls that have worn off the tyres. Piquet, Caffey, and Mansell furiously shaking his fist at Caffey. Move over, let me through. And Caffey does it, and Mansell really gets on the loose stuff and almost gets it sideways.
Yes, and I'm afraid Mansell rather lost his rag there and very nearly put it into the barrier. He was shaking his fist in what I'd call an over-agitated way at Alex Caffey, and then when he did go past him, once more, same place, he put a wheel on the dirt, got very crossed up, but I think he's probably got an overdose of adrenaline pumping around at the moment, and that certainly would have equipped him well to catch it. The reactions really razor sharp, but it certainly hurt. Caffey has really put back his challenge on 2nd place to Nelson Piquet. That traffic has hurt Mansell, and Piquet has been able to show them a clean pair of heels.
And now Mansell's got the problem with Briard. He's passed him now, and Prost has got the problem. But race order on lap 65, with Ayrton Senna, of course, continuing to lead. And it's Piquet still in 2nd place. Ahead, well ahead now in comparative terms of the 2 Ferraris, and Prost is right up with Mansell. You saw the 2nd car go through. Piquet, Berger is still in 5th position. Derek Warwick is still in 6th place. Martin Donnelly is out of the race. 7th is Stefano Modena. 8th is Alex Caffey, which is obviously why he was reluctant to move over.
And fast and furious it is for everybody except Senna for the cars in the top 6, because whilst Berger is some halfway around the circuit away from this battle, he's actually in it because of this 60-second penalty. He needs to race on the road, remember. But whilst he has been chasing Prost to try and get in amongst this group, he's put up a new lap record, faster than Mansell's lap record. It's now down to 1:22.6, but he is actually losing ground on the road to Prost, and that can only be because he's having more trouble with the traffic. Because Berger is lapping a little bit quicker, but the delays in the traffic have hurt him. So it's a little bit yo-yo, the Berger situation, because he's got back markers over the other side of the circuit. These people have had a lot of trouble with back markers, particularly Mansell with that group just now. And so the Berger chase is all changing lap by lap.
Are you still with us? I think Heavens James is with us to explain it all. Berger's on one side of the circuit, but still right up with the battle between Nigel Mansell in third place, Alain Prost in fourth position. There is the second place man, number 20, Nelson Piquet, going through, and he is now on his 67th lap in this 70-lap race, and he's coming up to lap Stefano Modena, who is in 7th position. So the second man lapping the 7th man, and the race order is still Senna leading, Piquet second, in third position Mansell, fourth is Prost, fifth is Berger, sixth and lapped of course is Derek Warwick, seventh is number 8 in the blue and white Brabham, ahead of Nelson Piquet here. Stefano Modena in 8th position. In the arrows is Alex Cappy. Down to the danger corner, and of course Modena is holding Piquet up here, no doubt about that. Modena with V8 Judd power, Piquet with V8 Ford power, and Nelson needs to get past. He goes past on the outside. Modena waves his hand to indicate to Nelson Piquet that he should pass on the right, and you look straight down the exhaust pipes and see that fiery red flame of Nelson Piquet's Ford V8 engine spent gases. And Piquet really flying now. He has only got 2 laps to go after the one that he is on. He's going to get 6 points if he stays there, and it's a long, long time since Nelson Piquet finished as well up as that. He's actually had 19 second places before in his career, most of which, of course, were either with Brabham or Williams. Those were his glory years, because his time with Lotus was not good.
Sorry, mate, but I'm sure that fiery red flame was the rear light. I think so, yes, I think the exhaust was behaving normally, and it was just his rear light, which, of course, for the wet race was on, but it's dried out.
Thank you, James. We'll let you know. My apologies, everybody. The old adrenaline's getting on top of me. And no wonder, because look at Modena now, with Mansell behind him, which is giving Prost the opportunity to close up. So Mansell in third position. We see Modena now, and we don't see any rear light or fiery gases or anything from Nigel Mansell's V12 Ferrari engine as he pulls rapidly away from the Brabham Judd. And Senna now is coming through to complete his 68th lap and start his last but one.
Well, a little piece of professionalism that by Mansell, if he did it deliberately, because it appears he switched his rear light off. And the trouble that the Ferrari have had this season with the alternator with the electrics, I would have thought that's very professional driving, to have it switched off and not load their rather suspect electrical system any more than is absolutely necessary once the wet weather's gone. Prost, I notice his is still on, but it would be taking professionalism to quite heavy limits that, to think of that. Prost may not have thought of it. And Berger has now closed up, still knocking this lap record down. Another new lap record for Berger. 1 minute 22, very easy one, 0.222. And he's now only a second behind Alain Prost. So Berger still in 5th place, but threatening.
What a pity they aren't all together from our visual point of view. But here is the potential, virtually certain winner, Ayrton Senna, coming through to start his 70th and last lap of the Canadian Grand Prix, having won in 1988, having failed to win last year only because his Honda engine let go at the critical moment in the closing stages of the race. Senna at Monaco, the previous Grand Prix, led from the green light until the checkered flag, and he is going to have had a similarly commanding race here in Canada. He's on his last lap now. There is Roland Brunschreider in the inset, the man who starts the races, the clerk of the course, the Belgian, and Senna has driven a copybook race.
Yes, a very straightforward win for Ayrton Senna once Berger had put himself out of the action by jumping the start. Berger, of course, remember, still leads Senna on the road, but of course Senna has had no reason to chase him. And I thought Senna certainly, let's say he changed his tyres conservatively in letting the road dry a bit more than necessary, and probably not the quickest way, but nobody else apart from Berger, who that got in the lead and got him away from Senna, he changed even him a little bit late, but earlier than Senna, and that gave him the advantage. And then it was all plain sailing for Senna. Berger, meanwhile, has battled away, but the big battle has been for second place. At the moment, Piquet holds it, and looks like doing so, the two Ferraris, but can Berger catch him on the road? And of course, this we can never see until we work it out from the results on the stopwatch.
Well, Ayrton Senna approaches the finishing line to win his 23rd Grand Prix. There is the official holding out that checkered flag. Senna is almost within sight of it now. He's down through the Olympic rowing strip, through the S-bend, and he's well ahead, and Ayrton Senna goes over the line to win his 23rd Grand Prix in the McLaren-Honda here at Canada. But who is going to be second? Who is going to be third? Who is going to be fourth? And there is Gerhard Berger, and we've got to work it out on the clocks before we know where he is. So Ayrton Senna has won the Canadian Grand Prix, no doubt about that, and we've already seen Gerhard Berger finish ahead of Senna on the road. But the question is, where is Senna in the race? And here it is, here is the news. Gerhard Berger has moved up into 4th position, 3/100ths of a second ahead of Alain Prost. What an amazing finish.
I think conditions were difficult for everybody. Slippery with the wets, and then with the slicks, still with the circuit quite slippery, very difficult to judge your pace, your braking points. Of course, to overtake slow cars, as soon as you go a little bit offline, the tires would just lose completely the grip. I had a first gear broken on my pit stop, so from there on, from quite early in the race on, I had no first gear. And I was very concerned more than anything that this first gear would compromise the gearbox later in the race, the other gears, but fortunately the car went to the finish line altogether.
The trouble was, as soon as you go offline to overtake, it can take maybe one lap or even a lap and a half before you get good grip back. And a few drivers were very good, they moved offline, but a few other drivers, they just stayed right on the line and forced you offline, and it spoilt the race at the end a little bit.
Ayrton Senna's 23rd Grand Prix victory here in Canada, with Nelson Piquet in second place, Nigel Mansell third, and Gerhard Berger fourth, in spite of that 60-second penalty at the start. 3/100ths of a second ahead of Alain Prost in 5th position, with Derek Warwick in 6th place. And in the Drivers' Championship, Ayrton Senna is now 12 points ahead of Gerhard Berger, with Alain Prost in 3rd place, Jean Alesi 4th, Nelson Piquet in 5th position, and a tie for 6th between Riccardo Patrese and Thierry Boutsen. McLaren now lead the Constructors' Championship by 29 points, but it's a new 2nd place constructor, Ferrari, who have moved ahead of Williams, with Benetton in 4th place and Tyrrell 5th. And in 2 weeks' time, it is the Mexican Grand Prix.